Let's turn to some of the things that Credo Action is doing, and one of the things that has been one of the most important sort of I think issues that we're facing at least domestically, and in terms of the when we talk about income inequality and we talk about sort of the government policy in terms of how it affects both the poor in this country and the middle class in this country, is in this day and age, and sadly, even despite the fact that we have a Democrat in the White House, there's we're learning there is, and I think many we've all learned this lesson that that's no guarantee we're going to see progressive policies. And one of the things that you guys have been working on is working with Representative Grayson on promoting his letter that he has been pushing with Mark Takano to protect Social Security and Medicare. Talk about what you guys have been doing on that front.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. Two freshmen, I mean, Grayson is back, but he's technically a freshman. Two freshmen in the Democratic caucus, Alan Grayson and Mark Takano, have done something which is really brave inside of Washington, D.C., which is they're bucking the party to push back hard against the White House and their leadership, to put the leadership on notice that if the president cuts a bad deal with Republicans that cut Social Security benefits, Medicare benefits, and Medicaid benefits, they're not just going to oppose it, they're actually going to vote against it. And for those of us who don't live in Washington, D.C. or work in the business of politics, that might seem like a no-brainer. I mean, the fight over Social Security and Medicare has done something that nothing else has been able to do. And Democrats and Republicans, they're totally united, right? And you think, how could that be? Democrats and Republicans are totally united. When we look outside the Beltway, Democrats and Republicans overwhelmingly agree that we shouldn't cut benefits. Shouldn't cut benefits. The election showed us that. But inside the Beltway, it appears that Democrats and Republicans also agree, and they agree that we need to start hacking away at Social Security and Medicare benefits. And so we have Democrats and Republicans outside the Beltway agreeing don't cut benefits, and then we have Democrats and Republicans inside the Beltway saying the conventional wisdom, and you know this, Sam, which is crazy to people who aren't part of this process. They're saying, yeah, they basically sat down and said, yeah, we need to cut Social Security, we need to cut Medicare. We're not going to gut them, we're going to cut them, right? And so what Grayson and Takano have done is they've started to create a wedge here. They've taken a look at the separation between what people want and what Democrats and Republicans have decided, and they've decided, you know what, we're not going to be, we don't want to be part of your club. We don't want to be part of the inside, which is going to cut Social Security and Medicare. And you know what, we're actually going to mess up your deal. And we're going to tell people outside the Beltway, we're going to tell regular voters that Democrats need to be on the record saying they're going to vote against this deal. They can't just say that they oppose it, because we know they're talking about voting for change CPI, which is a mechanism to cut Social Security benefits in the future. They're talking about Medicare means testing. They're talking about changing the eligibility age of Medicare. And so what they're saying is, let's just get people on the record. Let's just be straight, and let's get people outside involved. And that's what we've been doing at Credo, working with other groups. We've been organizing people around the country to ask their Democratic reps, will you sign this letter that says something really simple? It says, I will vote against any deal that cuts Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefits. It's a simple thing, and only 28 Democrats have signed it, led by Alan Grayson and Mark Takano. We're now calling them the Awesome Caucus. And so we're slowly building a group of progressive Democrats in the House that are willing to stand up and, if necessary, vote against and try and sink any deal, any cynical deal that the White House Democratic leadership and Republican leadership that cuts benefits for these crucial social programs.
Now, I want to reiterate. Now, I've said this many times on this program, but I want to make it absolutely clear why this is so crucial. We know that the Obama administration has sought a grand bargain since their inauguration. They're on record as seeking it. We know that the sequester, according to Gene Sperling when he was on Reddit talking about this in his fateful email to Bob Woodward, that the that the idea of so-called entitlement reform, which is cuts to benefits on Medicare and Social Security, was part of the DNA of the sequestration. In other words, the idea was the threat of the sequestration will drive Republicans and Democrats both to the table to cut entitlements and to raise tax revenue. So this is part of the agenda, and why it's so crucial. Why this is so crucial, and why I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your work on this. I know there are other groups, the Progressive Change Caucus, others who have been working on promoting this letter. I had Jonathan Alter on this program, ostensibly a liberal writer of some regard, who finds this letter in particular to be very problematic because it locks Democrats in. If there's going to be a deal to cut Social Security and Medicare, virtually the only way that it can happen is if all the Democrats provide the majority of votes, because the Republicans will still, you still have the Tea Party caucus voting against any new revenue, and they will require Democrats to come in and cut Social Security and Medicare. And aside from the political considerations, which is virtually, as far as I'm concerned, political suicide for them, but aside from that, we're talking about cutting the greatest anti-poverty program that this country has seen over the past 70 years in Social Security, and cutting benefits at a time where we see the complete failure of the 401k pension system. So we're going to have our parents, our grandparents entering into retirement age and having to deal with cuts when we know that 65% of Americans rely on their Social Security payments of $14,000 a year on average for over 50% of their income in their retirement. So this is absolutely crucial. And I'm curious as to, do you guys have a sense of how many more potential signers there are out there? Because we got to remember now, there are 200 Democrats, 232 Republicans, more or less, I think, in the House. And so to peel off, to get 50 or 75 or 100 Democrats to say no, we're not going to sign off on cuts to Social Security or Medicare benefits is crucial to stopping attacks on those programs.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And this is where organizing really comes into play. There's tremendous pressure on these Democratic members of the House not to sign the letter, because Democratic leadership wants to be in a position where they can cut a deal, and they don't. If they make this public pledge, it would be a huge deal for them to go back on it and then vote for the deal. And our only hope of avoiding this disaster of cuts to Social Security and Medicare benefits is to stop the deal from coming to the floor for a vote. So we have to signal to the White House that we can get enough votes to kill the deal, and that these progressives will actually vote against it. And we're not asking people to go to the mat for something, that seems, that seems more radical, like, what we'd like to see, which is Medicare for all. Let's just lower the eligibility age for Medicare to let everybody in. This is a really simple thing we're asking these Democrats to do. Say you won't cut benefits now or in the future as it currently is. It's an essentially conservative position. And, every day new people are signing on to the letter as we continue to put pressure. Stephen Lynch, right, known as a more conservative Democrat who's facing off with Ed Markey in a primary in the Massachusetts Senate special election. Stephen Lynch signed on to this bill because he's running an election, and he's hearing from primary voters, that this is something that they want to see. So we need to keep adding people. We've got a lot of strong progressives on this list, of course, people like John Conyers and Barbara Lee and Jim McGovern and others. But we also, we need to reach out, and this is something that any Democrat should be able to sign on to. And what they need to do is they need to hear calls from their constituents. They need people showing up at their public appearances back in their home district, holding them down and saying, if you say you oppose cuts, which over 100 of them did, signing a letter to the president, then why won't you say you'll vote against cuts? And the Democrats who say they oppose cuts and they will not come out and say that they'll vote against cuts, I think that your listeners are very sophisticated political watchers, and you can only read that as a cynical ploy to be one of those Democrats that gets to be part of the negotiation. Right? It's a selfish position where they want to advance their own agenda themselves, and they want to be part of cutting the deal. so that they can be there. But the real progressive point of view, or the real, just even the Democratic point of view to defend these programs, is to say outright now to the president and to Democratic leadership, if you bring this deal to the table that cuts benefits, the American people are against it. Democrats are against it. If you bring this to the floor, I'm going to vote against it. And that's the only way that we can win, is stop this deal from hitting the floor of the House. And we need to get, we've got 28 people that have signed against it, that have signed that they'll say that they'll do it. We have more that are making public statements on this topic, and we're going to continue to grind it out until it comes, until the negotiations, are actually happening, where we can come in there and wield a very, very big stick.
And folks, I want to make not to just to reiterate this point. There's been 100 Democrats who have signed a letter saying we oppose it, but there's only 28 who say that we're going to vote against it, and that is a very strong leverage point. And the difference between a pledge to vote against cuts to Social Security and Medicare and a pledge to vote against raising taxes, a la Grover Norquist, of course, is twofold. One is that like you say, the Republican and Democrats alike, 80% of Americans do not want to see benefit cuts, whereas almost an equal number are willing to have higher taxes to protect these benefits. And also, there's the distinction between whether or not you think that government should function, i.e., collect revenues, and what you think the priorities are for government to actually engage in, and one of which is to secure a retirement for people in some form of dignity in the retiring ages. So again, this is one of my favorite things that you guys are doing, and I think it's wonderful, and it's so important. And it's also one of those things that we can really have an impact on